suspicion we are live for episode 52. And I'm here with my friend Charlson to talk about an interesting thing that's been playing out for, I think, 4 or 5 years. We've watched this play out. So I'm excited to have you here. Charlson, why don't you start off and introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, I'm Charlson Choi, the CEO of a little quirky company called Cork, right? I think a lot of MSP folks out there, the audience that listening, probably heard of us appearance here and there a little bit. Background of it is pretty simple. We put together an opportunity and a cyber warranty product that the MSP can resell to the client. But more importantly, we put together what we kind of call a active loss prevention platform, really help you to catch the attack before it happens months ago. That's kind of what we got it for. But the goal is that we're a pure channel business, but we're here to solve a big problem. The problem we're solving for is how do you, as an MSP provider, provide a true way, a way that using your actual security data to underwrite a financial policy of which you can resell to your client to protect them further beyond just your great security protocol, your great technology stack, but having the financial protection for them. That's the core of what we're doing.
Well, and what I want to tackle today is really how do we get here? And I want to just directly speak to this.
Yeah.
I don't typically
Yeah.
do beard banters that are one-to-one pitches almost for a product or a company. So Charlson, I'm going to send you a bill for this, even though I don't do that. No, I tease. But genuinely, I want to speak towards it because I think the problem is why you've created what you do. And that's why I wanted this to be a conversation. So let's talk about the problem, in my opinion. So to set the stage, everybody that's out there, please comment. Let me know you're here. We'll try to actually see your comments in there and respond to you. I'm watching it on LinkedIn and on YouTube. But I think the core problem is we tried to ensure cyber risk. And I say tried to because we materially failed as a global industry. And by that, I mean, insurers like to deal with loss ratios. They want to have X amount of revenue come in and pay out X amount as a loss, or 50% or less, whatever the number may be. And they've been getting kicked in the teeth. Why? Because they're based on actuarial data. They try to base it on, if Matt's fat and has high blood pressure, he's going to die this way and at this age, and therefore his life expectancy is this, and I can insure him based on those things, based on proclivities, other things. But in cyber, Charlson, we can't do that as well, right? Or we haven't done that. Why don't you break into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I'll take in this. Like, I think 2 years ago before we started this journey, I just know MSP space, right? But when it comes to insure, I'm like, dude, this is like a mystic art, right? So when I step into it, the first question that we ask is, how do you actually correlate the actual risk, right, from insuring this environment, like per se? So first problem I see is this. Start with a simple thing, right? The cyber space that we live in is digital in nature. It changes every 1 second, if not even faster. We have data that shows the fact that, every, I think, 39 seconds, an attack occur, right? Now, completely digital moving environment that's changing. Then you go to the way that risk are underwritten today in any insurance, any model is long questionnaire that you filled out. Have you done this? Have you filled MFA? Oh, by the way, it's digital. It's done in the PDF format. And you're like, scratch your head going, hang on, guys, wait. You're using a analog methodology that you do once a year to underwrite a cyber risk, which is digital and dynamic.
Sure.
Right. To your point, right? If you look at a lot of what we call the loss ratio, right? In the industry, loss ratio means the premium that you collected from the end client, whether it be the MSP or the end client, a percentage that's put in what we call loss reserve as a reserving that we are going to pay out because of incident. And that number is going up higher and higher. It's industry average right now, 65% loss ratio, meaning for every $100 they collect, $65 goes away because of the claim. And fundamentally, when we double click down in an initial team that we did this research, go, wait a minute, this is your problem, guys. You're underwriting a digital environment that changes all the time. You do it once a year over a form that honestly, sometimes people, yes, no. And I've actually talked to a lot of MSPs like, I don't even know what half the things are.
Well, let me dig in a sec.
To us, fundamentally,
dig in a little bit.
That's no problem.
I want to dig in a little more on this. So hold on. The other challenge is they ask binary questions to non-binary problems. Do you have MFA? On what? I have 29 different applications. Which one you want to know about? You just want a yes? Or what type? Or how deep? Or and you get into this challenge of asking these binary questions to non-binary problems that also blurs the data even worse, right? In that regard.
And guess what? You double click down, it's right. If the MSP, their client, right? Most of them has more than one client, right? To survive.
Sure. You'd hope
20,
so. Yeah.
30, 40 client, 100 plus
yeah.
client. There are clients who said, I don't want MFA, right? Because there could be some sort of rules, some sort of in place. So the binary question is to say, do all of your client carry MFA? Which app? Wow, how did that happen? What button did I push?
I don't know, but you did do something there.
Dude,
It's a little
I did something. It's firework,
thing.
right? It's literally the firework that's going on, right? But you think about that, it's the binary question does not let you have level of granularity at an application level,
correct,
at an environment level, at a client level. But the moment that checkbox gets checked, when you say yes, guess what? If somebody gets popped somewhere along the way between the next survey happens, oh, I'm sorry, Matt. You know what?
You said you had MFA.
You told me you said you have MFA, and which now become a lot of MSP. I was talking the last couple of weeks, along when we were on the road to trade show, they're like, my legal counsel said, don't fill those form out. That's a huge risk for you, for your business, because if something goes wrong when you can't get popped, you're now the guy for the insurance company that tells you, Matt, you said you attested to that you have MFA on them. I don't have it on. Like you really find yourself in that, that's kind of is an issue that we're trying to solve, right? It's a fun.
I would say you're in that position anyway. I would argue if you are giving the data that is part of the analysis of yes or no, then you're going to be the person they hold accountable in some degree. You've seen that with subrogation lawsuits. You've seen that with the rescission conversation from Travelers in 2022. So you've seen evidence of that. I think people try to argue that point of, well, what if I fill out the form? What if I don't fill out the form? It doesn't matter. You're the provider. And if you're the one hailing them in some email that you answered it, you're probably responsible. So I'd say that's another part of it, or at least not responsible, but certainly part of the conversation of what happened here that gets brought up from a subrogation and subrogable risk perspective.
Well, now I'll throw this in there, right? For the industry in general, they're getting smarter at it, right? They go, okay, you know what? We need to start making some correlation, right? You've seen stuff that would say, hey, you run an external scan of a pen testing. We're going to insure you. And now I'm going to, here's another one I use quite a bit.
You're right? Like, what else? What did you scan? What did you even scan? Like, with my website? What else?
You scan from outside, you're safe, you're good. Right? So they're getting there, right? And then there's one that would say, hey, you know what, Matt? In order for us to underwrite you can use this security stack that we made ourselves. You're like, wait a minute. You went from buying insurance for insurance company to buying tech from insurance. That's the last thing you want to do, right? Or they have a business partnership.
Let alone the fact that how are they managing it? What's the impact of that management? Like that's the unspoken to part of this problem too, is that it's not just tools. In fact, like even if you just read the CIS safeguards, it's about 50% technical and 50% non-technical controls. And in every single technical control, there is some non-technical component and administrative component to it. So let's not get down that path too deep.
Just think of it this way, right? You just got yourself a brand new, I don't know, pick your favorite car brand. What's your favorite car brand? Oh, you're a bike rider.
I have a lot of motorcycles. Right? Let's just say it's a new Triumph or a new Ducati. Let's just go that direction.
New Triumph, new Ducati, right? You go in there, you go to the car insurance guy, and they will go, you know what, Matt? You've been a long-term customer of ours. But, in order for us to, for you, in order to get that Ducati insured,
you got to buy the gas from us. We have to do the maintenance.
You have a gas
we got to get our tires from me. Yeah.
It's kind of mind-blowing for me, right? If you take a look at that, it's like, wait, why wouldn't you just plug into what you have, right? So fundamentally, there is definitely the cyber insurance
lack of understanding of the
in general trying to figure it out. The problem is that you have the security stuff. Why don't you just plug it in, guys? Plug it in and get the data. And that seems to be is an obvious thing, but it's not to the industry. Right now, they are approaching it. They are starting to realize that we need to do something. But the way the how is fundamentally not the right place.
You're kind of like, if you look at it and zoom out, in my mind, you're like watching a baby learn to walk, right? Like it's this stumbling, bumbling, carpet burned knees and a broken tooth on the table and mom patting everything around you. Like, and it's this waking up to this understanding of, oh my God, this problem is way larger than we thought it was. I can't even just issue tools and make that work. And I think to your point, and we're almost done beating up the problem here, guys and gals. We'll start talking about the solution too, maybe. but the problem is that you see this very virgin awakening of understanding of these insurance companies, of what it actually takes to deliver security, at the same time that companies are making that wake up, and at the same time that practitioners, and many of you, 30 or 40 people watching right now, are part of that challenge.
Yep. I'll throw this further into, as I start learning about the industry, the algorithm for underwriting, the algorithm, right, that says your premium is this, is purely driven by how you look, how big your industry is, what you ate. It's all historical data. It's right. That's why it's called actuary science. It's based on what happened in your industry,
measurable actions and data.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem is, here's the thing. Guess what? If there is a breach or exploit in the cyberspace, guess what? We patched it. It's no longer a valid point for underwriting. Right now, if you're doing a fire insurance, great. The mountain next to my house ain't gonna move. My house ain't moving. So the distance between my house and the it'll stay the same. So your model of
floodplain or non-floodplain is always the same.
Stay the same, right? But then the cyber world is different. The moment you patch it, that data is no longer valid. This is why it goes back to the problem was, why is the insurance premium keep going up? Because the underwriting is the core of the issue. It's not tying to the actual, and they call it actuary science, but it's not. They're not tying to the actual data that you see every single day that coming in. New exploit that
our data is more ephemeral, right? Like our data is more ephemeral in some ways. And I think one of the other points you made that is just kind of dawning on me is, like, if I patch, then that problem is no longer relevant or part of my risk. That said, however, if one could discern patterns of me sucking at patching, one could establish some actuarial separation, right? Like if we know that there's this, pattern of Matt always patching 6 months later, and that then ties into risk profile, what are your thoughts on that as a data set delineation?
Well, from a data set, that's exactly the point, right? I mean, recently you probably, we all have heard about the big, screen connect scenario, right?
I've been tracking it, Charlson. It's horrible. It's still horrible.
Right?
People suck. I've lost faith in humanity, Charlson, if I'm really candid about life.
I will tell you this much. The moment that happened, all my partner, they got a notification from me. It's like, dude, you got X number of endpoint that not patched yet. And they're like, I do? Yeah, great. Now, a lot of them act right on, we're already on top of it, but there's some that said, find a scenario where they said, I don't even use that product. And guess what? 15 minutes later, I get a call. They go, thanks
one provider
for that, because I have a co-managed client that put in, and I'm like, so if you think about it, it's not that they have no intention, because when you have so many endpoints, so many clients, so many environments moving at the same time, that's that you don't use a product. But 3 months in, a new knucklehead in a co-managed environment says, this is a great tool, put it in. This is exactly your point, is that the patching response time is much closer correlation to the risk in the environment and the form that you feel you have it or you don't have. This is the granularity that we have to change it. That's where data comes in, right? It's like, you got to take those data that matter, instead of just saying, do I have used this product or do I not?
Yeah. It's moment in time. I was talking to a guy. So I did a speaking engagement for 120 of the world's largest CISOs in Nashville a couple of weeks ago for a thing called Innovate. And I was talking about these things. I said, stop filling out the 300 questionnaire about your SMBs and ask this simple thing. How do you patch? How do you handle vulnerability management? How do you handle asset management? How do you handle identity management? And those type of things. And one of the interesting things was, this gentleman reached out to me and said, hey, Matt, I'd like to get an hour of your time. And so I met with him a couple of days ago, and he was a CISO of a major insurance carrier. And he was asking me, he said, Matt, how do I deal with supply chain validation? Like, how much is too much? What should I be doing with my client supply chain? And I said, I paused for a second. And I said, well, it depends. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, if you want to meet the satisfaction of a checkbox for compliance, the answer is simply follow whatever process you're using and sort out the companies by basis. But if you want to stop getting punched in the face, you might get a little bit different answer out of this. And so, to your point, you're looking much more at the punched in the face lens in this conversation, in what you just brought up.
And I think this is where the world comes into match, right? Look, I was like, this is something I've learned over the last couple of years, and especially with guys like Ryan Weeks, right, who's kind of working with him. He's like, look, there's a right of boom and there's a left of boom, right? Well, what you look at today is the industries are bifurcated, right? The
Sure.
right of boom is primarily financial insure product. In the case you get pop, let me at least say, in the case that you got pop, post, they reactively cover you financially. They're not incentivized for you to not get popped. They incentivize you. Honestly, I hate to say it, but I'm going to get into trouble. Not to pay the claim. Oh, Matt did not fill this form out. Matt filled it incorrectly. He didn't check the box right. The left of boom, we got a lot of great tools: attack surface management, EDR, XDR, MDR. You name it, we got them right. They are incentivized to help you to prevent the lower the probability of getting popped. But these two industries are
and I
not
would argue that
working
the
together.
insurers, I would actually say, are in a uniquely weird place where they are both incentivized for you to lower that left of boom occurrence, right? Stay left of boom. But at the same time, they're needing to reduce the amount they pay or use forensics as a weapon to find where they don't pay the post-breach claim in that same way. So it's kind of a dual-edged sword there from an insurance perspective.
And I think that's why you got to tie those two together
in some way. And I don't mean to be that exclusively.
No, but I think it is right, because part of the things that in the way that how we start talking about solving the problem is like, if you tie those two together, if the right of boom is incentivized to prevent the pop from happening, now you're really going into the notifying the MSP or the operating. By the way, we're seeing the early signal, or a leading indicator to potential ransom. And here's what: go fix patches before it happens. When you tie those two together, all of a sudden that incentivize of the pre and post together, you're going to get a better product coming out the end of the equation. Let it be insurance, all the different options out there
for all parties involved.
The client, all parties. Because you don't you in your house, in your commercial office building, you don't put it in a fire extinguisher behind a glass so you can break it every day and use it. No, you put it there in case. Excuse my language. Shit hit the fan. You hit it. Well, so
for that one magical day when Matt put a fire alarm in the microwave, right? It's
exactly. Boom, you go in there, right? So
no, it's such a good call. I think one of the things I'd challenge, and maybe this will be spicy moment here, is how is your approach any different? And what I mean by that is, let's say you're collecting signal and you're finding those things that create this evidentiary belief that something bad's about to happen, and then someone doesn't act on it. In some ways, you're almost just making the process more understandable, that if I don't do the stuff you're telling me, you're not going to pay. I mean, is that also a truism?
No, so here's a couple of things how we approach it differently. We started with a promise that, look, Matt loves his Ducati, so I'm going to help you to ensure whatever you have in place, right? So it's we call it bring your BYOSS. I'm trying to
bring your own
BYOB.
signals.
I could
bring your own signals.
Bring your own bring your own security stack, right? I tried to get the B in there to bring BYOB, but it didn't work. So did the best, right? So now you plug right in and use it. Then the second thing I think I think we've done it really uniquely from that perspective is that, to your point, if I raise a signal to say, hey, Matt, you got this one particular endpoint, you had the cure period to patch, knucklehead. I'm going to call you knucklehead in a moment.
That's fair.
Right?
I'm usually a knucklehead.
3 days, like you said, you're terrible at it. 6 months later, you haven't patched it. Well, the way that, because we precisely dialed in and integrated it from we call inside out from all the signal perspective, guess what? If your client or if you get popped because of that endpoint, then I can say, hey, Matt, that thing goes wrong. Now, meanwhile, what we can do though, if you get popped because of other endpoint that is still protected and patched, we can say, oh, guess what? You're still protected. So because of that level of telemetry, we're not going to say blanket the entire policy is avoided. It is if it's rid of that endpoint, we do have the right to deny, because it's leading the prevention, not the reaction, right? It's just a different way of thinking about it.
But now you're getting into the actual meat of the solve. And I think the meat of the solve is that data. It is the data. It is, I need to know what assets I have, what's covered, what's my attack surface look like, what is my patch surface. So what stops you from becoming a asset management platform? What stops you from becoming the authoritative what is an asset conversation even in that statement?
Well, the way that we see is that there are plenty of partners out there that does it well, right? We see that you've seen some of our partnership with guys like Line Guard out there. There's
Sure.
plenty of partners doing such a thing out there. There's no reason for us. For us, we take purely as what they already have, or integrated in the partner environment, the client environment.
Yeah.
Taking those information to kind of put that additional necessary signal highlight, right? You get so many noise in that signal. With these noise, we kind of elevate the important one that leads to a potential attack. I take an example. I always use this as your favorite sweater, right? You see a little knot, the behavior is rip and pull. The next thing you know, your sweater falls apart. We're looking for those knots to say tie that up in the same place.
Yeah.
Good example that we always see is like, hey, for example, this particular email account client, you see this quite a bit. They have high frequency of attack, but somehow MFA was not enabled in the stack. It happens more than once. Those are the leading indicator of a potential BEC,
Sure.
which then lead into ransom. We call for those things out now. Are there plenty of tools out that do this today? But what we do, we elevate that signal just for that piece. By the way, know that if you don't fix this, it could lead you into a lapse coverage. Lapse coverage. It could lead into denial for your cyber insurance policy.
Sure.
We're here to help you. I think uniqueness is giving that additional dimensionality in, we call it, like, at this moment, it's the active loss prevention, right? You do it right.
Yeah.
You better not have it than have to break the glass, right? So
yeah, true story. The other thing about it that comes to mind for me is there's a lot of data, right? One of the things we said is, looking for that data, actually tying your signals to the things that help at some point reduce the actual damage, right? Those type of things. But it does mean you're collecting a lot of data. And I really start to have questions as a practitioner at, the same reason I wouldn't want to give my insurance company managing my tools. It's that data that I think is valuable for, against, and you have some risk there. What are your thoughts on how you handle the data to make that risk less powerful?
It's interesting, right? Because this is probably one, because we incubated the business for a year because we want to get a badass product on the market, right? One of our founder investor, Austin McCord, most people know
I've
him.
heard of him somewhere.
Yeah, you might have heard of him, right? He said product cannot suck, right? That's literally what the term.
Sure.
And
That's
we
fair.
got to get it
It's a
right.
good
To get it
start.
right was, we spent a lot of time talking to MSP going, well, you have a lot of my data. Well, the way that we look at it is, how do you get the lowest privilege data, read only, specific to the one that matter the most? That's it. And we look for contrasting, helping to map these, and this is where the magic happens, right? We take those risks. The idea behind is, how do we now map those into CIS control that the MSP can operate on? If they operate in that in mind, then we tie it in that. A lot of those we can spend days and hours talking about. You can get guys like Ryan on the phone. We'll be like, we'll have a ball for like 9 hours straight, right? You'd be like,
Nobody else would
maybe it's a
enjoy
podcast
it, but it
marathon.
would be so nerdy. It would be great. Yeah,
It would be an amazing like podcast marathon. But for us, we simplify it down to a set of control the MSP can operate on. Because at the end of the day, we know they get more notification than anybody else. And I think a lot of that is still an ongoing journey for us. As far as securing data, our job is not to carry those data. We don't want that liability either, right? That's why we're trying to work with MSP, continuously have that governance of what is being able to store, what don't we store. But the goal is minimize that impact, because at the end, these data is already in your current environment.
It's meant to be signal that you're then processing is the intention, not the entire signal set. That's kind of the point, right? So feeding that back. I think that speaks towards it. But back to the raw problem. So now let's say this company, what you're doing at Cork, but let's just say a warranty type program that is tied directly to this system, these assets are covered as long as they are meeting these things and continue to do so. So what have you seen play out in the data? Like, have you seen something other than the 65 points expected in the traditional holdback of insurance, or are you seeing a similar kind of actuarial output from this? You're a year into it now.
We actually seen some really interesting point, right? What we're seeing mostly is that MSP actually are busy folks. They are finding themselves in an environment that they didn't realize they have in place, right? I think a couple of MSP says, oh man, this is a third pair of eyes to help me to make sure that, they have good ones that got good, practice, like every quarter, they did an audit of all the client, look at all the tech stack, right? All the security stack. Are we matching? Are there certain endpoints missing? Are there certain client missing? Guess what? This right off the bat helped them to put a good night of sleep to get that dialed in, right? I think that's one piece for them. And then the other piece for a lot of the MSP, they start thinking about, it's like, wait, how did this help me further to make me uniquely different than other player? They kind of thinking about, well, to your point, right? The underwriting with solving this problem, I do believe that it's not just a warranty issue. It is a insurance-wide industry issue. And I think some of you actually might have been in, Write a Boom a couple of weeks back. They saw several cyber insurer at the Cork booth. Like, whoa, these two worlds are fighting. They're not fighting. I go, guys, I hate to tell you this. You need warranty and insurance. Like, you buy a car, you buy your favorite bike, it comes with a warranty to make sure that your powertrain, your engine, everything is working as a manufacturer spec, aka MSP security service agreement with stack, people, warranty. Then you buy your auto insurance in case a knucklehead runs into you and somebody steals your favorite bike, right? Two guys. You go to cyberspace, there's cyber insurance. You need that. I'm not telling people you need cyber insurance if your business is a certain size, but you're also going to want a warranty around the entire environment, what the MSP provide with the tech stack, with the solution. So the idea behind that is like advocating, or it's an and solution. And then the industry as insurance, they need to start learning that the data that you need are there. Don't use a stupid form. I hate to say it, that form drives me crazy. That form is insane. You're underwriting
full of lies,
dynamic with static versus just plug and play. We doing that today, and I think that's really what you find that in Write a Boom. A lot of the insurance guys, we're having a chat to say, how do we solve this problem together? Because if we do it right, guess what? Their loss ratio will come down. The loss ratio will go from 60, 50, 20, and then the premium will come down. It'll become affordable. I mean, it's a really interesting problem. I think that everybody needs to solve it.
There's something here too. One of the things I think is an interesting part of this is you are quite incentivized to be good at finding the systems that have the flaws, right? You're directly incentivized by that. So there's this one-to-one. Well, what's interesting is I'm doing the CIS mapping project, and I talked to you about it, and you and Ryan Weeks are doing quite a bit of stuff that way yourself. But one of the things that came out is we came up with these terms of the ways it's mapped. One would be facilitation. One would be partial. One would be full. These are things that speak towards how one does something. Aptigo or a GRC of any form, right, is a facilitator of every safeguard because it's got to manage it. It's going to matriculate it, those things. But then there's this term I had to invent, which was validator, something that's actually checking to see if the safeguard is in place. What you're actually talking about in this warranty program, or however you approach it, I'm not just pitching Cork, I'm pitching the data. But the understanding is if you're looking at that data and checking it, that's the most important part. It's validating that the crap I've set up, that the things I say I'm going to do are done. The other thing to add for that is it allows you, and I think maybe Darren's speaking to this, by the way, I love me some Darren. If you don't know Darren Cirillo, you should. He's impossible to find though, so he's like a ghost. But the point being is that if you are looking at it from the data perspective, I should be able to win arguments with my client by showing them that data, to see the stack non-adherence, to see people using assets I'm not tracking, to see these things. And I wondered, Darren, maybe if you're in the chat, he says having a small team, Cork's definitely helpful for us in double checking things. But I wonder how effective it is also in validating that the things you say you're going to do are done, validating that clients are following the right things. That kind of aspect, I have to imagine it's helping wield those changes and challenges. When you find out Screen Connect's running on a machine that you didn't have control over, you should be able to go, hey, bro, either y'all need to deal with that or I can't protect you. And I just found this, right? I wonder how much that plays out as being wielded as a data source, no matter how it's being contrived. Thoughts?
I'll say this. I'll add that in. Like I think guys like Darren out there, they are busy every single day, right? To your point. I've got MSP that now started taking this and say, hey, I'm going to go to the client and say, Matt, you have a gap in your stack. I know for years you didn't want to do this, but look at this. This is that you are now providing the risk in my environment. To your point, your IT guys should not be installing this environment. So to us, this is also becoming a tool for that verification. Amen. No matter how much cyber insurance that you buy, this is the piece that where let's face it, no matter how big your policy is, when you get popped as an end client, what's going to happen is the investigator will come in and say, hey, I thought you have this. I thought you didn't do this. I thought you attested this. Well, in this environment, that to your point, where we play a unique role is now the verification that you as an MSP have done your part. Right. And by the way, the client the client say he said no, Matt said no. Here's the document that says so. What it really does, it also helped the MSP to really lower the risk when it comes to legal liability. But more importantly, it's really being able to tell the client, say, Matt, you might not be the best client for me because you're not listening to me. I'm no longer your trusted advisor, right? I actually encourage some of the cyber insurance guys, do what we do, because this is not a warranty problem. This is a cyber insurance financial coverage problem. Period. Like, we just happen to start with what we got.
Bigger problem than that.
Get going.
Yeah.
The problem we're solving is prevent is better than react. Prevent is better than recover. You want to be on that left of boom. That's the goal.
You take this to something, and there's been a concept that several of my friends have said, and I don't want to steal this, but this understanding of why does the airline industry and have NTSB that's doing these actual investigations into what happened, and then now that turns into a part change, a process change, a whatever it may be in that organization. Much too, in my way, Charlson, I believe that the data-centric approaches, whether that be Cork or whether that be insurers that are heading down this path, the people that are getting the data will do two things. They will influence consumer and pilot behavior. We will have that. But they will also influence the jackass making the airplane. And I think part of this is you're going to start seeing those data points in collecting this that uniformly go, no, that's a flaw that this company created, and we're going to take legal action because of our loss against those companies. You've already seen it. There was a lawsuit against Excellion as an extension of an insurance claim paid out because saying my client got breached and had a major healthcare breach, but your software was crap. We're suing you for the software being crap. Do you see that playing out too in some of this data collection and evidence aspect?
Absolutely. Like, I would say data don't lie, people do, right? And data, you can do good or do evil with it, right? The way
yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Like, the way that I believe and what we all believe in, the people that I work with in the community, right, is that we got to do good with it. If we do good with it, look, it's going to pan out. You do evil with it, I'm sorry, you're going to extend. I think one thing is really unique is I think the cyber insurance space is going through a massive transformation, and this transformation is digitizing your. I'm gonna get in trouble. Like crazy analog methodology to underwrite a digital environment. Those who make it will be the one to say, "Hey, instead of keep raising price, right? Exactly. They see the data. The data tells them today that says loss ratio going up, so I'm going to raise my premium. Loss ratio going up, premium. But once you solve that, they have a choice. The choice, to your point, is, I can continue to be evil, collect high premium because I'm happy with this, or to say, how do we offer that back to the community so that by rewarding them for good behavior, premium comes down by having a good security hygiene environment. I think that to us is a good and the evil two-sided equation. I'll say this: the industry, we are talking, right? What I'm pushing is, why wouldn't you offer a lower premium if you got good security hygiene with whichever vehicle you want to drive, whichever bike you want to ride? Well, but we don't know. No, the data is there. It drives me crazy every time I'm talking like, guys, the data is there. Why are you refusing to look at? Well, because the algorithm doesn't work that way. Well, change your stupid algorithm. Change the algorithm.
Yeah.
Use the data you have and augment it with historical data. Now you're going to get much more accurate read. That's the piece I think where the industry has a breakthrough, and that transformation will be. I think the good ones will live and survive.
Yep.
The not so good one will probably contain the right kind of crappy policy, to be frank.
And it doesn't stop with insurance. What I mean is, like, there was a major provider, I won't name names, that I was having challenges when I enacted device posture checks, right? I was checking to see if the browser you were using to sign in was up to date. I was checking to see if you had any malware. I was doing those basic posture checks. And I kept failing. And I was like, why am I seeing Chrome 57 show up in my posture check? And the reason was it was embedded in one of the major vendors, PSA, as part of the way they authenticated. And I bet you're going to see that data and start going, oh my God, what do I do with this? And I think that's the piece that I think good citizenry will say. These companies like the Corks and others that are gathering this data will start saying to the major compendiums, hey, we found this. This is a problem. You need to deal with it in a way that I couldn't have done, right? From a money perspective or size perspective. So,
well, that's our job, right? I think that's part of where you're getting into. Is interesting when we start talking about we need some sort of consortium that says this is the standard of practice. Like when I was in the video game space, We got ESRB that govern to say
Sure.
what is a NC-17 game, what is a kids rated game.
And we all
I think
knew
when
what an
now this,
NC-17 game was. Like, we knew in our heart, but it codified it,
yeah,
right? That's the
right.
difference.
It codifies saying what that is and what that standard is. Today, that lever and that standard is moving in every single direction. So now you got a lot of left of boom that says, "Hey, we can do all this. We can make you more secure."
Yeah.
Secure against what framework to what
Right.
standard?
Yeah.
Right side equation, right
Amen.
a boom that says we're financially great. Buy these products, you can make better. But then I'm like, guys, wait a minute. We're moving all over the place. So the calibration is not matching. So I think part of that, to your point,
Agreed.
is I think some of the initiative we have to band together, or I think as an industry to say, well, can we set some sort of standard framework that, guess what, guys like vendor like us, we're now working toward that standard. This is a standard we live by.
Yep.
That's kind of, I think this is probably where the maturity comes in. I think this is still a good amount of years to get there, but ultimately the end is, it's a fun problem to solve. It is a data-driven problem. We know the problem. The question is, are people willing to take the pill? Is it the red pill or the blue pill?
Yeah. And what we also have to remember, Carlson, is that everybody doesn't have to survive, right? Like, this is my channel. I can say that. I'm not on other people's stage. Everybody doesn't have to make it. Every patient doesn't have to survive. And I think that's what most people don't get either, is that when you have this transformative change happening and you see the things we've been seeing, others can rise up and take the business. You can see this world where you don't have to stay in business if you don't choose to take one of the pills, to your point, right? This, I guess, blue pill or red pill aspect of that. So I think what we're going to see is transformation. We've already seen this rapid uptick, to your point, of standards, lots of standards, and people's argument of what those standards are. But over time, this education and data centrism will then pick the standards that are actually meaningful. And you and I talked about it. Ryan Weeks is, like me, we're big CIS proponents and digging deeply into these very pragmatic frameworks, but doesn't matter which one you pick. It is nice to tie it
No,
back to data.
it's to pick one, right? And then to make it so simple, what is the action that the operator, let it be an MSP, co-manage, or even end user, what action should I take to tie a knot on this little thread on my favorite sweater so it doesn't come apart? Right.
Yeah,
That to
100%.
me is like, it's the most interesting part. I keep going back. It's like, how do you get this, make it simple? If it's simple notification, you will do it. If you don't, it's just going to a bunch of your notification sea of like my special folder of all notification on every platform.
Yeah. I have a question. Do you ever think there's a benefit in notifying the end consumer of that challenge? Like, one of the things that's in CIS around training, one of the training components is train your users to be aware of patching problems, right? And that's controversial in my mind. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, look, I always, if you look at the business I've been, growing up in the last 5 years, is MSP business at the end, their clients are my client, right? I look to them as far as what's the right thing for the relationship. Now, I think over time, I think that relationship will get closer. I've seen some MSPs say, yeah, no problem, go for it, because we have a transparent relationship. And I think that's how you build a trusted partnership, but some manage it differently. So it's various based on the relationship strength between the MSP and the client. But in my opinion, I think, transparency is useful for us to be able to become strong, because ultimately, at the end, I would tell you that you look at all the breach that happened, the tools does everything they can. Your favorite security awareness training, everybody will sit through, like doing the DMV test.
Right.
Guess what? It's because the end user are the people who click on that email, who click on that. Oh, that looks like Matt's email. I mean, like, I've had scenario in my prior life where no matter how much training you train the CFO, they always get targeted, and they like, dude, the CEO's
Where the
next
money
quarter,
is.
he's not stuck in Romania somewhere. But
Yeah.
it happens more often than less. So it's almost like, how do you get to your point, right? How do you notify but educate, more importantly, so that they're aware of this thing, right?
And can it be actionable?
These phishing things getting smarter.
Yeah. To your point of making it actionable and making it something that can be done. I think the other part of this is, and I'll leave this, maybe we'll kind of wrap up on this concept. This isn't a single variable problem. This isn't a single thing that comes together. It's a myriad of variables involved, and you can only pull certain levers, even sometimes in those variables. But I would imagine, if MSPs out there aren't validating their tools, aren't doing the things necessary to confirm that the settings they want are there, this probably is a good way to make revenue to do that, right? I would imagine MSPs are making revenue and margin on this type of product.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of by design. We've done it that way, right? I'll put it even further. Even if I have folks who currently just did pass through, I'm not going to make margin on it because they believe in the ability to offer additional help for the end client. It becomes a
Like a
retention
pro serve.
mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Is it really a retention mechanism for the client? You think about it, right? In the early stage when cyber insurance comes in, you'll find yourself not able to make a margin on it, but also at the same time having to give up the client relationship to the insurer, right? All of a sudden, you have no control over the situation. The way that it really needs to evolve to is that where the MSP themselves continue to own and manage that relationship with the end client. Then that would become part of the overall add-in, let it be a warranty, let it be insurance, where the relationship is still owned by the MSP. I think to me, that's always the fundamental of what I believe in. Now, other insurer might not believe in. I believe in that if the relationship is owned by the MSP, this will become more tacky relationship. They're the first point of
Sticky
response.
product.
And then when something goes wrong, nobody's pointing finger at each other. We're there to help the client to recover rather than saying, well, your MSP didn't do your part or you didn't do your part. No, like
you would know that up front.
the hell is on fire, man. Put the fire away.
Right. Well, I think that's the argument of whether you're doing this through a Cork or whether you're doing this yourself, you need to be doing that validation to find when there's failures in the system, when there's things. So this is a viable way to do that. And I think as my overall takeaway is start taking data-centric approaches to, hey, am I actually doing the things that need to be done that I say I'm doing, that meet the safeguards that I say I'm doing? And very specifically, if you aren't going down a Cork road, especially if you are dealing with insurance applications, you are filling out and saying, yes, I'm doing MFA. You need to understand that risk that you're taking on, in my opinion. Charlson, I'll let you close it out and let us wrap it up. We're right at the top of the hour. So closing thoughts, brother.
I think your closing thought is perfect, right? It's literally ask you ensure. How do you ensure that the client gets back up and running quickly? And then we don't get pointed at the finger. We're a partner in this endeavor, right? But more importantly, think about this overall. The data is there. Use it to your advantage. Don't just overlook because that's how it gets used currently. This is where I think is such a unique push for the industry. And I'm there advocating it, pushing it. I say channel first. And this is where the insurer guys, sometimes we're not the favorite people, but I said these are all you guys who
well, and you're still screaming the same stuff that a Lion Guard's saying, right? Validate, check for things. It's not going to stay the same way. Look for delineations. So I appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Great.
Next time I come on, I'm actually going to be on with Darren Mott, my friend, the FBI agent, to talk about the TikTok challenge.
Oh, man. Okay, I got to listen to that. That should be an interesting one.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see y'all later.